My name is Tom Roth, and I work at the Henry Ford Hospital Sleep Center and Wayne State University College of Medicine, Department of Internal Medicine. I came into sleep in 1970 when there was no sleep medicine. It was a research society, and I came there because I desperately needed a summer job. And I came to the realization that, we knew virtually nothing about a third of our lives. So this is an interesting thing. Also, I was very interested in doing research, and sleep was great because you didn't have to do big literature searches. I didn't have to read a lot of articles. And third, the people in our society were the kindest people in the whole world. I went to the first sleep meeting. Major people, came over to me as a student and asked if they can help me and explain my abstracts and things like that. So I was attracted by the field, and I was attracted by the people, especially Doctors Dement and Rexhoff, and they're very, very important people. I love to point out that, the sleep research study, which is, the pre-runner of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, one of the things it was called the Association for the Psychophysiological Study of Sleep. And every year that I was there from 1960 to whatever, every year there was a debate about what to call the society. And somebody came up with the most appropriate name would be Bill and Al's Club. But what's very important for people to understand is the American Academy of Sleep Medicine exists, probably would have existed no matter what, but exists where it is now because of one man. That's Dr. William Dement. He was totally a visionary. Day one, he knew exactly what we needed to do. So he called a group of people together to discuss the formation of this association for clinical sleep societies. And we met in Chicago on the second floor of the Hilton, and we had a one-day meeting. And we agreed, and there are many people there. Most people don't know who many of them are, but the major people were Dr. Dement, Elliot Weitzman, David Kupfer. So many of these people are no longer in the field. John Karajan, Bill Orr. I can probably get through all of them. There was representatives from Dr. Kale's lab. Dr. Kales didn't come himself, but he sent, I think, Ed Bixler to come. There were several people there, and it was under the leadership of Bill's discussion, it was agreed that we definitely need something like that. And formally we decided to do this. The International Sleep Meeting was in Edinburgh, and we met again, and we decided to go ahead. Then Elliot Weitzman, myself, went to Stanford. Elliot was being treated there medically at the time. So Dr. Weitzman, myself, and Bill, and we wrote the bylaws. And then we had a meeting, and we elected officers. And the officers was Dr. Dement was going to be president of the society, and he was president for 10 years. 10 years. And he launched it, and like he launched everything, like the journal. And then Elliot Weitzman was the vice president, and David Kupfer was the treasurer, and I was the secretary. So we were the officers. And then there were committees. The main committees were the accreditation committee of sites. And so we went around visiting sites. And in the first year or so, there were 6 sites accredited. Interestingly enough, 2 were in Ohio. One was my site was in Cincinnati, then Helmut Schmidt in Columbus, then John Karajan in Houston, Texas, David Kupfer in Pittsburgh, Bill Dement at Stanford, and I'm missing one, but it'll come to me. Oh, I said Pittsburgh, Ohio for 2, that's 3. New York. Oh, Elliot Weitzman, New York, sorry. And that actually is a historically interesting story, So we were going to call ourselves, Association of Sleep Disorder Clinics. Dr. Weitzman, pointed out that he works for Montefiore Hospital. In New York City, clinic means free. So if he's going to join the society, we can't be clinics. So we became the Association of Sleep Disorder Centers. And it's very important to understand that this is a society of centers. The current AASM has lots of members other than centers. And Philip Westbrook started something called the Clinical Sleep Society. And that was sort of had a relationship with the AASDC, Association of Sleep Disorder Centers, and that was the individual membership, and eventually we just merged and took it over. We had annual meetings. Since we didn't have hundreds of people, we always met with somebody else. So we had a meeting together with the SRS. We had a meeting together with the American Thoracic Society. So they had we had a meeting with the Academy of Otolaryngology. So we had, and then we started having our own meetings. I remember Dr. Dement's 10th year, we met in San Francisco, and that's when I have a picture of him handing me the gavel. I became the second president of the association. But again, I can't, Bill, first had the first sleep clinic. He formed a sleep clinic, originally started out with the treatment of narcolepsy, but then Dr. Guillemot came, and that became broad in terms of sleep apnea. But he advocated for it, he did it. But again, we started, we did everything. We started, crediting centers. People sort of said, like, how can you credit yourself? That's what people do. And then eventually it'll be done externally, but we got to do it, like we gave the first exam, and, but eventually it became part of a national society, not internal, but you got to start somewhere, and they're not going to do it unless. And people tell me to this day, I gave the first exam in Cincinnati. I think it was 1975. And as I mentioned, the committee was myself and Mary Koskadden, and it's very heavy neurosciences. People tell me to this day that the current exam is much easier than the hard one they took in 1975. And you're one of those people. So one of the things that was very interesting on a personal note is I gave that exam, and the night before the exam, you got to remember the people who took that exam were all the people I mentioned before. So Bill Dement took it, John Karajan took it, Elliot Weitzman took it, and it occurred to me that if they don't do well in an exam, it's all going to be my fault because I gave a stupid exam. But it turns out Dr. Dement, not shockingly, got honors. And there was a young woman who was a resident in psychiatry who got honors, or people we didn't know about. And it was paper and pencil, and they wrote reports. And at some point, all those things were sent to the central office, which was then in Rochester. I don't know what happened to them, but theoretically they exist somewhere, that first exam. Oh, well, Phil became very involved in the society, in the Clinical Sleep Society, and we realized, it was working out of Bill Dement's office. And Philip's wife, Cal Westbrook, volunteered to run the society at that point in time. And it wound up in Rochester then. There were 27 people. And I remember, lots of people, a lot of scientists, I don't know, like 3 people from UCLA went there. And not shockingly, it's 27 people, 9 failed, 18 passed, and 2 with honors. Howie Roth sat for the exam. A lot of the researchers sat for the exam. And I'm sure I could think of most of the names. It'll take me a while to do that. But it's all the people sitting around. Bill Law sat for the exam. Karajan sat for exam. Elliot Weitzman sat for the exam. The names will come to me. But it was all people who've been in the Sleep Research Society for a long period of time. At that point, Philip hadn't joined. So there weren't any people who just came in through the clinical side. It's all people who came in through the research side at that point. At that time, I don't know if I think it had become the SRS already, but I'm not positive. But the Sleep Research Society, saw this as a very positive thing. It was a very positive thing. We held a meeting jointly in Columbus, Ohio. The journal was formed as a joint functioning of it. There were times, there was an ebb and flow. There are times where there was some rivalry, but it was which is mostly not rivalry, but there's some bitterness in terms of financial issues. But no, the AASM support, the SRS supported the AASM. The AASM, every ASDC member was an SRS member. It was 100% overlap. So it was good relationships, and again, with not only with the Sleep Research Society, but with the American Thoracic Society, everybody encouraged. Everybody sort of recognized the need for a clinical sleep society. for people to provide clinical services and to develop standards for those clinical services and to provide standards for who gives that standards on an individual basis and on an institutional basis. So there was nothing but collaboration with everybody at that point in time. We weren't, the ASDC didn't have, meetings of 4,000 people to compete with the SRS. In fact, at that time, the SRS didn't have meetings of 4,000 people. But again, all the initiatives, or all the societal initiatives, were joint. In fact, something which we now call the APSS, we took the name from the original Sleep Research Society, was formed as a joint venture between the two societies. And they put on the national meeting, they put on the journal, and it was very collaborative. And I think it is to this day. I think it really is. Well, even during Dr. Demen's presidency, the main issues was, when you start a new field, the question really becomes, what are the standards? What are the standards? What is an adequate workup for patients with sleep apnea? When do you do MSLTs? All the things which, as the society matured, had position papers, we had a struggle. So, you got to remember, so we said we sort of had people going out and doing accreditation centers. So one of the things that we were very interested in, what are the site visitors going to look for? So I'm going to go visit Columbus. What do I want to do? One of the things that was very important is in those days, sleep centers, were a little obscure. We wanted to know if I'm a patient and I'm going to Montefiore for a sleep study, am I going to be able to find it? A sleep clinic's under the Directory of Clinical Services. So we're very interested in things like that. We want to know the qualifications of the technical people, the qualifications of the medical people. They had to have somebody who passed the sleep boards. They had to have technologists who were trained, because then there was no accreditation of technologists. But it was understanding what personnel was necessary, what the facilities had to look like. You got to remember, like in the Mayo Clinic, sleep studies were originally done in a hallway on gurneys. That clearly would not have made, if a site visit was done at that point, it wouldn't have been good. So, where did they have their beds? Some people, which was interesting, and one of the things we discussed is so some people wanted to use beds which are used for some function during the day, which get turned into bedrooms at night. And there was a lot of discussion about that. And we decided that probably wasn't a good idea, because you'd be at the beck and call of somebody else. So you had to have dedicated space. You had the quality of the space, the quality of the polysomnic of the machines, the quality of the recordings. So, the most minimal kinds of things we want to know. What are the procedures? What are the methods? What are the clinical diagnoses? We wanted to see what their referral letters look like, what their workups look like. We did a lot of chart reviews and those things. And we wanted, and very, very importantly, we wanted to know what the commitment of the institutions were. So we always wanted to talk to representatives of the various societies, of various hospitals. What is your commitment? You go to a place like Stanford University, what's your commitment to the sleep clinic? And sometimes that's a very difficult thing to get. So that was the big interest. So again, those are the things we were very interested in defining standards of practice, standards of training, standards of this, standards of that, which today, are formalized by the Academy in great detail and done in systematic ways, which then everything was relatively arbitrary. For me, the Academy of Sleep Medicine, gave us, an application of all the research that was done. So people were doing all of this research, people did good and poor sleepers, and what is that, so people looked at REM onset, and, so for me, this gave me an opportunity to apply all the things I learned doing the research for my first 10 years to clinical practice. And it helped me create models of clinics and attract people. And it allowed me to attract young people to come in and work in the sleep center. So I was able to attract somebody like Frank Zurich to come in and run a sleep clinic. It enabled me to attract people. And it made me visible in an institution. I eventually, in 1978, moved to Henry Ford Hospital If we were just doing academic research, they would not have recruited me. So, and the other thing is it on a personal basis, it broadened my horizons. I'm not sure I've learned a lot about control of respiration. We're not for sleep clinics. We're not for sleep medicine. It broadened my horizons in terms of things like pharmacology. So it gave me an opportunity to apply my skills. But equally important, if not more important, it showed me the need to develop additional skills to be able to do the jobs that I wanted to do. So Bill Mint had a vision of what a field is. What do you need? So the first thing you need is clinics. You need a medical discipline. You need procedures and do that. Then you need a scientific journal. All these things we discover, you shouldn't be going to the Academy of Neurology journal to study. We felt at that time to learn about narcolepsy. You shouldn't have been going to, at that time, the Thoracic Society journals to learn about apnea. We needed a sleep journal. We needed a sleep journal which focused on a variety of different things. And so at one of our ASDC meetings, we decided in a joint meeting with the SRS that we needed a journal. And several people were nominated, and I'm not going to mention a lot of names, but some people said the field doesn't deserve a journal. Some people said the field does deserve a journal. I'm not good enough to do it. But we were very fortunate, which again, Dr. Dement came to the rescue, and Drs. Guilleminault and Dement became the first editors of the journal. And again, as was the case with the association, they ran it for 10 years. And again, fortunate for me, I became the next editor. But at that time, unlike the first time we sort of sat around, the second time, Jerry the society had applications, who wants to be the editor in journal. We all came again to Chicago. We always met in Chicago at that Hilton. They did interviews and I was selected and then we put terms on them. So the journal was again a part of Bill's vision, Dr. Ment's vision of what is a field of sleep medicine. And the last thing that he felt that we needed to be a field, and that's when Mayor Krieg got involved, and he and I were once in California, and we needed a textbook, and that's how Principles in Practice became, and the editors of that were Dr. Krieger, Dr. Dement, and myself. So this is all Dr. Dement's master plan of what makes a field. We need a clinical practice, we need guidelines for the clinical practice, we need a journal, we need a scientific journal with broad distribution, and a textbook. I mean, one of the things that people have to appreciate is what struck me because the 7th edition of the Academy, the Principles of Practice just came out. I mean, this field, the number of pages in these 40 years, it's like quintuple. We went from people questioning whether we deserve to have a journal or not to now there's 15 sleep journals. Maybe there's too many, but certainly. And again, I think the Academy of Sleep Medicine owes much of Dr. Dement's vision. And he advocated for the National Center on Sleep Disorders Research, which was an incredibly important thing. And he went to Washington multiple times. But he again, there are a lot of people. Unfortunately, some of those people passed away. Elliot Weitzman was a major mover in the society. He was, Dr. Guilleminault, albeit later, was very important. Phil Westbrook came in and sort of had and people like Phil, had the gift of not having the baggage of being in the SRS. So like I said, there was a big value of being in the SRS, and Bill and Dr. Westbrook certainly appreciated that, but he came to it fresh, and he came with a purely medical model, not a research model. And there was a lot of people like that. John Sasson was another person. But a lot of people came directly into the Academy of Sleep Medicine, while when we first started, it was all people from the research societies. John Shepard's another person who came in from the outside, and it was incredibly helpful. Well, I'm hoping that textbook changes, to be called, the title of the textbook is Principles and Practices of Sleep Medicine. It's obviously, we plagiarized that from Harrison. So I think, and we'll see what happens, but I think that eventually should become Krieger's Principles and Practices of Sleep Medicine should be title of the book. But we'll see. And the other thing, which Dr. Dement, again, was very interested in, is getting young blood. And I think that's, if you notice this time, you have younger people, editors in Principles and Practice. And I think that's what makes the Academy very successful, is the recruitment of young people with new and fresh ideas. I think you need somebody like Dr. Dement to run the journal for 10 years, to run the Academy of Sleep Medicine for 10 years, because you need to put it on solid grounds. But once you're established, and so when I took over the Academy after Bill, we passed in the bylaws, they're 1-year terms. You're past president, and because you want young, fresh ideas to come into it, people from different areas. So you need the leaders to sort of start the field, put it on firm ground, but beyond that, evolve to younger and fresher ideas. Well, I think it's very difficult now because, there's so many different, there's no, so when we first started the joint meetings, there was one track. Now there's multiple people. You have to depend on lots of people. You have to have lots of different skills. So that people like Alan Avedon in neurology, they're all the people at Brigham and Women's Hospital and at the Mayo Clinic who are doing sleep apnea work, which is totally, groundbreaking. There's all these people like Mark Mahala's group, and who he passed away, unfortunately, but who are doing things in REM behavior disorder. And then there are people who work on guidelines and things like that. So there's no, we've come to the point where there is no person. There is not going to be another Bill Dement. You can't be, because you can't attend all of these sessions. When I went to my first meeting, was in 1970, Dr. Dement sat at the front table, tape recorded the whole thing, which was only one session. Well, you can't do that now. So you have people like, we depend on people like Charles Eisler, to inform us about, circadian rhythm disorders. But it's not only circadian rhythm disorders. One of the things that has evolved, and people like Chuck and other people, in the creation of the National Center is understanding not only the role of sleep in patient care, but understanding the role of sleep in public health. So we have people, Human Stroll, interested in things like driving. What are the requirements? So I think all of these various things, tell us we have to find different people. We have to find educators. We have to find people who can educate the public. We have to have people who can develop relationships. And there's a change, So when we started in 1975, there was, it was a predominantly psychiatric society. If you wanted to understand all about sleep and you didn't want to go to sleep, you go to American Psychiatric. Well, today you don't do that. You go to American Thoracic, or you go to American Academy of Neurology, Phyllis C. in neurology. So, there's no single person anymore. And I think that speaks to the strength of the society. I mean, Jerry Barrett, was the William Dement of administration. There's little question that Jerry Barrett changed the nature of the society. He made it a professional society, just like Bill and all those people made it a professional society, a scientific and medical. Jerry made it administratively a professional society. How do you get into the MI Academy? How do you lobby for the American Board of Medical Subspecialties? How do you, find out what your membership wants, increase your membership. I think administratively, Jerry and now his successors, have, done an amazing job. Administratively, so when I came into the field, I remember in 1975, I had the sleep meeting in Cincinnati, Ohio. One person ran the meeting. He raised all the money, or she raised all the money. They produced the books. They did everything. Now, just go downstairs. Jerry created a division of meetings. He created other meetings. So I think Jerry, just like Bill had a vision of sleep medicine, Jerry Barrett had a vision of what, of what a professional medical society should look like. And he applied that model very successfully to the benefit of the AASM. And he was very, one of the things I was very complimentary, there were lots of journals which came out. Michael Chase had something to Sleep Research Online and blah, blah, blah. And people were very upset. They went to Jerry and said, can we stop this? And Jerry said, no. We just got to be better than them. Jerry was a big believer that excellence wins. So administratively, quantum leaps, which occurred mostly at the behest of Jerry Barrett. My interest in sleep is for a variety of reasons. One of the things I often contemplate about the fact is the discovery of DNA and RNA was right around the same time we discovered REM. So we're going into molecular genetics, and we don't know about a third of our lives. And so that always struck in my mind, and the kindness of the people, of the members in the society, the success of 4,000 people is. But when we were smaller, from then on to this day. One of the things is being kind to students and Students' Day and things like that. But what come to mind is all those things. I mean, I can give you 30,000 Bill Dement stories, and or Al Rechtschaffen. So my first introduction to Al Rechtschaffen is I'm sitting with a colleague and who wound up in sleep medicine in Australia. And he says, I'm the reviewer of your paper and I rejected it, but I can tell you what made it, like how to make it better. That's a great story. And we have a lot of people to be thankful for it, and I remember, and there was always great exchange, and AASM is the personification and the codification of the practice of sleep medicine. At least in the United States, but probably in the world. It fosters everything about sleep medicine, from its practice to its training of young people, its recruitment of young people, to provision of data in terms of public health. So it is a personification of sleep medicine in its broader sense, from patient care to public health. What's exciting about sleep medicine is it's in its infancy, and it was really, really easy to grow, and it's harder now. I remember when I was young, Bernie Webb got up and gave a talk. The reason I went to sleep medicine because everything you touched was gold. Well, the reason I went to sleep research was everything you touched was gold. At some level, that was true. For sleep medicine, it's not so easy now. It's not so easy now. We don't make breakthroughs now. Some people make breakthroughs, but most of us now lay bricks, which builds a foundation of excellence in sleep medicine.